Hey, pretty casual gaming. It's Tehnoobcake here with episode 15 of the Casualcast, as it is now named. We are today doing the sequel to a previous video we did, A Realm Revisited, with TheDevinAspect, which was about A Realm Reborn and revisiting it all from each different perspectives that we all had from finishing it at different times, or in Sandy's case, skipping all of the dialogue. As always, with me is Sandy. So, say hello.
Hello. Hello.
We have Logix once more, who is now just recently finished Heavensward, giving us the ability to actually do this. And we have TheDevinAspect once again.
Hello.
Before we begin, I want to give Devin the opportunity to talk about his channel and what he does and where people can find him.
So of course, thank you. So, of course, for having me again. And TheDevinAspect here. Mainly do a lot of gaming. We play a lot of 14. Obviously, we'll be coming up a lot in December. But I do try to dabble in other story games. So as well. So just to kind of spice it up, because I have gaming ADD. So we're going to see what happens. And hopefully some other future things going on. But that's pretty much the gist of it.
Alrighty. Well, I can definitely relate to the gaming ADD. I load up a game, play 2 minutes of it, and then I go, you know what, I really want to play this game instead. So to begin with, so that people who haven't seen it already, like Logix, and I don't know if Slandy has it actually, but I know Logix definitely hasn't. And for people watching over on the YouTube or the Twitch who haven't seen it already, we are going to together watch the Heavensward trailer first to give an introduction to the expansion of Heavensward. So if we all load that up, and I will give us a countdown. Has everyone got it?
I'm ready.
Yes.
Sandy? All right. 3, 2, 1, press play.
Peggy 16.
I need to adjust my audio, because otherwise this is going to deafen me. I love that sound of snow and wind.
It's good.
Oh, for anyone, before it proper gets into it, there's light spoilers for A Realm Reborn.
Oh, yes.
I forgot about that. The music was so good, as always. Just a reminder that she died in A Realm Reborn. Sad.
Oof. Spoilers.
I wish we could get this armor set that he has where it's like all covered up, including the axe. That'd be my warrior glam forever. Oh, From the Heavens is such a good motif.
It is.
My least favourite character coming up. I hate Sid. Yeah, I have a version. I had it back in the day, dyed in white. With like pure white, looked really good. But yeah,
the music
so,
all the time in that.
I can rewatch probably all the trailers about 1 billion times and still never get bored of them.
I still think my favorite like menu screen is the Heavensward menu screen. I think
Oh,
it's still
yeah.
my favorite one.
I had a little incident a few months ago wherein my internet was disconnecting me all the time. Just after I got home after my laptop died, and so I actually changed the intro screen on Final Fantasy 14 to the Heavensward one, and I just had that on constantly. So every time I disconnected, it was just the Heavensward thingy. Before we continue, I just want to thank Berry Derry for 3 months tier 1 sub. Thank you for that, Berry, and then welcome to stream. Also, Slandy, stop trying to Slandy dance in the fucking Pretty Casual Gaming. I read chat. I see what you're talking about. Before we actually move on to the next point, I actually want to ask Logic what he thought of that trailer, because I know it's your first time viewing it.
I think it's pretty good. I mean, seems to show off most of the elements of the story.
It was a good trailer. It also uses a lot of the music which is used throughout the story, which is really good. I apologize for looking down to the podcast. It's just I've got my notes all on paper this time as opposed to on my tablet. So my first conversation is I want to talk about when we all did Heavensward. Now, as with any piece of content, I obviously did it back in the day when it was current. As I stated earlier, I did 3.0, 3.1, and 3.2 when it was current, but I actually didn't do 3.3, 3.4, and 3.5 until about a month before Stormblood. Logix, as we all know, has only finished recently, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this right now because it was waiting on him to finish. I'm actually curious, Landy, because I think you'll have the shorter answer. When was it you did Heavensward?
Last year, I think. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was. Wasn't it?
I think it was. You started Heavensward a long time ago, but only actually did it last year. It's been since we've had this channel, I feel.
Yeah, I think last year I started with the new character, which I just skipped a lot of things up until late Heavensward, maybe. And then I followed the story afterwards.
Shame. When did you do it then, Devin?
I would say about 2.5 years, I think. Because I'm trying to think the timing, because I want to say I started Realm Reborn before Shadowbringers came out. It was around when it was announced, and I know it took me almost an exact year to go from ARR to Shadowbringers, and the only part of that's because Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, and I took some time to play that. But so yeah, it should have been about 2 years, 2.5 years since I played it. Because I can't remember if I got to it before Shadowbringers came out or after. I want to say before, because I want to say there were some changes in my rotation that happened after Shadowbringers came out because of the moves they changed.
So before we actually get into like the deeper aspects of each little facet of Heavensward, I just want to get what everyone's general opinions of like what their opinions of Heavensward is when they played it. So we'll start with Logic's because he's the most recent. So it'll give us all the time to jog our memory because he has more recent memory to access.
I mean, I've obviously got Stormblood currently in my memory, but I thought it was good. I thought it was kind of nice that we had a part of it where we sort of find out that the people in Ishgard are not so not so good. It was a case of like, oh, we're not all like what we were talking about with the heroes and villains thing in the previous podcast. Where it's good to have characters who have sort of a bad side to them and stuff like that. I kind of feel like some of it was a little bit easy to guess what was happening or what was going to happen, for me at least. Like with the Archbishop and things like that. Um, Obviously, the cutscenes kind of lead you in that direction, I think, as well. So I guess it's intentional. I liked the parts with the Azure Dragoon.
Estinian.
Yeah, because of course he's a
Badass.
It was good to see him in action.
Always gotta love Estinian.
Before we actually continue, I just want to quickly check with the other members of the podcast. Is Logic's mic a bit staticky for you guys?
It did get a little staticky, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just you might want to check that Logic as we go forward.
Yeah, that could be my internet still being a bit slow today.
But we'll move on to Devin next because I feel like Slandy is going to be the worst answer, so we'll leave it to last.
You gotta have some balance. You gotta have someone to balance it out.
That's what he's here for. I'm the person who lives on the game. Slandy's the one who forgets everything.
Oh man, Heavensward, man, that was the game that really that was the expansion that really made me feel like what I did in Realm Reborn was like, this is why you were doing it. Like it's probably the only reason I'm able to talk about Realm Reborn as much as like how much I like it, and it's because of what Heavensward brought. It really, the way it leads into it like, because the way it starts, I think people just because one of the worst things that you can probably tell someone's like, just wait until you get to Heavensward. You're not going to enjoy Realm Reborn. Because there was a part of me that was like, oh yeah, there's Heavensward, but let me get this now. And then as I was going through Heavensward, it was just like, oh, all that stuff I did in A Realm Reborn, this is why I'm here. This is all this, all the different things that happen. The storytelling just ramped up in a lot of different ways. The cinematics were more fun. We had these unique characters. I kind of like the Ishgardian style that they chose with this. A lot of good themes to go, and the music was just I mean, the main song is Nobuo Uematsu. Can't go wrong, just like Answers was in A Realm Reborn. You have a lot of music in this one, Dragon Song and the Heavensward main theme, like all Nobuo. So it's just the way it just hypes you up in those moments, and the way it does in that cinematic trailer. You get that throughout the experience, and you just feel like, okay, this is a really epic story. Things are going down, you just get out of what happens in the Realm Reborn, and you go into the Warrior Light, and you kind of build your way back up. There's like this disconnect with Highland that you have to go through, that you have to kind of reestablish that. So there's a little bit going on with yourself. Just a lot that was going on with just your character and the ones around you, and getting to experience this new area that we haven't gotten to see, but only have kind of got a glimpse in before. So I loved it. It's one of my favorites, and like I I think I played it like 3 times a bit through, trying to catch up with people, just because it's like I like it that much. So because there's just some good story beats, without spoiling too much.
Before we move on to Slandy, I just want to thank. I can't see the name because my actual Twitch chat is at the other side of my bloody room because of how my setup has to be. But Slandy will thank you via name. But thank you to the person who's just followed. I apologize for not being able to see your name right now. But we'll move on to Slandy. What was your experiences and thoughts overall, without any depth, to Heavensward?
Without any depths. That's probably the right thing to say to me. Honestly, when I started streaming Heavensward, it like everyone know, I skipped a lot. And I think it was after or a bit before the vault dungeon that managed to make me stop the skipping. After Newcomers said to me 100 times that I stopped skipping. And yeah.
All the Final Fantasy people cringe. You skipped.
Yep.
It's the World of Warcraft player in it. He's so used to playing a horrible narrative that he just has to skip everything.
But yeah,
No,
but yeah, I did like the environment, etc. in the game, and the music as well. And I love the snowy areas in the Heavensward regions. They're pretty. I love them. So, and then it brought my itchy class as well, the Dark Knight. So,
which you ironically only picked up more recently. So,
yeah. On my second, technically my first character, when I actually reached Heavensward the first time, I switched instantly to the Dark Knight class, and then I made this one I'm actually playing on now, a few years later. So,
shame.
Yeah, shame on me.
My experience with Heavensward obviously is so long ago that I'm pulling on like small memories to try and like really talk about myself. It's up until we get to like Endwalker, around we visited Endwalker, and you know it's still Endwalker. I'm going to be like this for probably most things because, as I say, it's all past for me, so it's all very long ago. And as I was explaining to Devin before, I actually plan to do a new game plus sometime after Endwalker comes out. So I'm trying not to spoil. So a lot of what I say can probably be a little wrong because, as I say, it's such a long time ago. It's pulling off memories. But I remember the first moment in Final Fantasy XIV that I truly felt a level of epicness, and it was such a small moment, and yet the epicness was on another level. Would have been first entering Ishgard, the actual city of Ishgard, and the I forget the name of the actual track, what it's called, but when you first go to the first part, I think it's the Foundation, and that music, the bum, 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 that plays. I fucking loved that. It was just the scope of the city as well as you looked upon it was beyond anything we'd had in A Realm Reborn, truly, because obviously Aldar is fairly big, and you know the Maelstrom, the Limsala Minster has some really cool architecture, but we'd never seen out on that kind of scale like we did in Ishgard, and so that was amazing. The music, I think Heavensward, like I loved A Realm Reborn's music, and there will always be a part of me that will have a place for Shiva's track, ironically, because I did that fight so many times. But Heavensward was the first expansion where I started to feel like all of the music was stuff I liked. Because there was tracks in A Realm Reborn that I thought were great, but there were also tracks that I was like, you know. Whereas Heavensward was the first time I was like, all of this music is great. And I'm a role player, and one of my most like memorable moments in RP was I was doing an RP in Quarthus Western Highlands, and the music there there was this tone of sadness to it. And I remember it well because the role play I was doing was about some character dying, and the music just went so well with that moment. And that music itself, I can't remember. I think it's something like Western Winds or something like that. But that soundtrack was amazing. It holds a place in my heart. And just overall, the expansion was really good. I really liked the aspect that it was more about us than A Realm Reborn had been, because obviously A Realm Reborn was our transition from Nobody Adventurer to Warrior Light. But A Realm Reborn was also about building the Scions and how we place in all the grand companies and what the world is like and stuff like that. Whereas Heavensward, it removed the Scions at the beginning. Well, A Realm Reborn did really, but the story of Heavensward removed the Scions. It was just you, Alphino, and Tataru, and then obviously you get Estinian and thingy later. But it just and with what Midgardsormir did to you to take away your ability of Heidelin, it was completely focused on you and your character, which I thought was great. And then obviously it had the story beyond that. The patches were great, the raids were great, everything was great. It really was just all around a good expansion. But I don't want to go too deep into it because obviously then we're about to talk about in the next little parts. And speaking of the next little parts, we will start with the story. So probably the biggest, most important part of Heavensward for a lot of people to this day. I think it's aged so well. So before we really talk about any depth of the story, I really want to ask, like, what was your favorite moment each of Heavensward? And I'll start with you, Devin, as our guest.
Oh,
Only one
There's a
moment.
lot
You're only
of-
allowed one.
only one? Oh no, this is a problem. Pick just one. Oh man, there's so many good ones. For those who are Final Fantasy players, like, it's so spoilery though. I really like the fact
You can
that we
do
got
spoilers
to-
here. That's the whole point. We've all done
Okay.
Heavensward.
I know it's just some. I don't want to spoil too much, but it's. I love the fact that we got the Knights of the Round,
Oh.
in a fight. That was so awesome, and the way that they kind of did all that, how it integrated with the story, and it made sense for that to happen. With Thornton and everyone, it's just. That just a great way to do that. It was like, oh wait, this is that one thing that I know in 7 you had to get this summon and this crazy thing. It's a crazy long cinematic. Now it's also kind of like it's although fight if you mount farm in it on the it's the extreme version, but it's not called that minstrel ballad version of it.
Minstrel's Ballad of Thornton's Reign, yeah.
Yeah, it is a nightmare to unsynced mount grind because of the length of time, very much like Praetorium kind of gives you to go through. But in terms of story, it was still like really cool how, wow, I get to go do all these moments. It's the Knights of the Round in this whole way, and the way that how the story really sets it up. And the second time I went through it, I was like, they had the whole thing there. I should have seen Knights of the Round from the very beginning. And there's so much. There's a lot of other things. I mean, to
But
this
you're
day,
only allowed one.
I'm only allowed one. I'll let you know.
So
I'm so
we'll go.
indecisive.
Yeah, I feel like if we just left you to it, would be like, oh, there's no moments for us left to pick.
Yeah, fair.
So we'll go with the person whose answer I have no clue what it will be. So Slandy, what is your favorite moment of Heavensward?
Can't remember.
You what?
Okay. I actually do remember. I think my favorite moment is actually the cinematic after the vault, where where you follow the bishop and the son is. I can't remember from which family he was from or house, where he's been killed off. But
Horsefont.
Yeah.
Smile best suits a hero.
But yeah, it was that cinematic which basically caught my attention to the story, I think. So
I'd just like to note to Raya Alpha, it is a good thing this isn't a quiz because his name is not Horsefont Four Temps. His last name, I believe, is Greystone. It's a bastard name. He's not Four Temps. He's a bastard. Yeah. So Logic, your favorite moment. Yours is the most recent, so.
That's a tough one because there were quite a few good moments. I think, slight spoilers ahead, I think my favourite moment is probably during the part where the dragons come to make the peace agreement, and Estinian in his new form comes along and stabs the dragon, and obviously messes all of that up because we're like, peace talks, we're done now. And he comes along and shakes the whole thing up again. He's like, surprise.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was quite a powerful scene.
So my favorite moment is just before you fight Nidhogg in the trial version of him, right at the end of Dragonsong War. It's when you're on the bridge and the camera pans to you and you're walking across the bridge slowly towards Nidhogg. And I will always remember that moment because it was back when I had no taste in glam and my character was wearing like a cowboy outfit. So I'm just slowly walking towards this huge fucking dragon with like an axe and then a cowboy outfit, and it looked so dumb. But the moment was
swinging a lasso above your head.
Pardon?
Swinging a lasso above your head.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just this epic moment, and I was wearing such a stupid outfit for the moment. And it would just be always something I remember is that walking towards Nidhogg, just looking like a complete prat.
It's a good fight,
but
though.
Yeah. But into the...
Is that the one with the when he's like walking above you and you've got to avoid getting stomped on?
Fucking above you. No, that's normal
when you're
steps.
underneath the dragon.
Pardon? Yeah, that's normal steps of faith. That is a Realm Reborn still.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one as well. If I had to pick two, that would also be one of the moments for me.
But that's not Heavensward, that's a Realm Reborn.
Is it?
I was letting
Yeah.
It's very, very much a similar spot, though.
Feels very Heavensward.
Yeah, it's because it's lead up to Heavensward.
I guess it's so long ago, yeah.
That
But
was
it's
one of the
Visha.
lead-ups,
Yeah. So with the story, I'll do a short little breakup of it, and then we'll have everyone have their little words. As I say, memory is a bit foggy, so apologies if I miss small bits. So obviously, Scions are either dead or wanted. We're all fucked. We've all been on the run from Uldar and that lot because we've been framed for killing the Sultana. So we run to Ishgard with the help of Sid, and we meet Horsh Font, who's like, yeah, I'll help you. And then eventually, right at the beginning of Heavensward, he's like, yeah, I've got your permission to come in the city, by the way. So we go to the city, and at first, we go meet the four temps, thank them for allowing us in, and then we go looking around, and Tataru begins a descent into becoming the final boss of the game. After that, we go around helping four temps. We go to the Quarthus Western Highlands and the Sea of Clouds. We see Bismarck for the first time, but don't really do out with him. It's kind of like, oh, hello, big flying whale, see you later. And so we begin our quest, around Quarthus. Then I think it's after that we either meet Estinian or we go help meet Shiva and kind of go with her. Then you begin with traveling, and you go to meet Rasulgar and his people, and eventually, they really don't want to help if they can help it. They don't want to fight their own kin, but they let you into the journey mist, and you go up and you meet. You deal with Nidhogg, and you deal with him so early. At the time, it felt so weird to me because obviously that's what kind of it was leading you to believe. Oh, fuck Nidhogg, and you just fought him as a dungeon boss, and I was like, oh, okay. But obviously, along this journey, you kind of become close with Lady Iceheart, Izael, and Estinian. You learn more about him, which obviously, if he was already a dragoon, you get even more information about him, which I thought was the first time something you'd done as side content really affected you in the main story, and I thought that was awesome. And they should definitely do more of that. It's actually why I've gone and completed every side quest in the game, just in case. And yeah, so you learn about the fact that the whole Dragonsong War was caused because of Ishgard basically betraying a peace with the dragons and killing the sister of Nidhogg. And obviously all the other dragons didn't seem to give a fuck, but for some reason Nidhogg was like, humans must die. So we defeat Nidhogg and we go back to Ishgard with the revelation that, Ishgard was all built on lies. The whole noble houses, the religion, all of it was all built on lies. So we're going to talk about that, and obviously we get accused of like heresy and shit like that, and we go to meet the Pope, and Aymeric helped us with that, but that obviously goes horribly, and Aymeric gets captured, and we go and save him in the vault. One of the biggest moments probably in Final Fantasy XIV's history, Horchefont dies in the vault at the very end, for saying a smile better suits the hero, which to this day still is used in parts of the narrative because it's such a big, as I say, it's such a big moment. And sometimes I wonder really if Square Enix expected that, because it went on to become such a legendary thing in Final Fantasy XIV. Like even at FanFest, they have like shrines. It's such a big moment for a lot of people. So we go to the Sea of Clad and we kind of deal with shit there. We're trying to go towards Azizlar. We fight Bismarck, who finally made a reappearance. Oh yeah, I've missed parts. Like we fought Ravana back in Divanian Forelands, and he was awesome.
Ravana's
but
so
yes,
good.
yeah, probably one of the best fights to this day. But yeah, so we fight Bismarck, and then we go to Azizlar and realize that we can't go to Azizlar because there's a big barrier. But Pope Forden can, because he got the cheat code from Bismarck after we defeated it, so we actually helped him there. And then so we go to meet I can't remember if that's when we go to. I think we bring back Y'shtola first. I can't remember if it's that early in the story or whether that's post quest, but I think we go help Y'shtola and then we go to Matoya.
Yeah, because isn't that the reunion?
Pardon?
Because I think Y'shtola was Matoya's student.
Yeah, that's why
we did bring her back. It felt like it took a while till we got to that point, but yeah, I think you're
yeah,
right.
I just can't remember if it's in the main story or if it's in post patch quest. So if I've got that wrong, of course, and people actually realize, please do correct me in the in the Twitch chat. As I say, my memory is god awful, and I did this years ago. Most of what I remember is from watching other people play it. But yeah, so we go to Matoya and we learn about making this huge fucking ram thingy that we can pierce through into Azizlar. And then we eventually, after doing all that, blah, 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 we go to Azizlar. And then out of left field, my favourite Legion comes in, the 6th Legion with regular Van Hydrus. And we have bits of tiffs with them, and then they just fuck off. I love the 6th Legion, but I felt like that introduction of them into the narrative just wasn't really necessary. It was cool. I loved the big ship, but it just didn't feel like it had to be there. But obviously, the point of it being there was so Isolde can die. So we lose Lady Iceheart as she goes Shiva and tries to stop them.
Really good.
We landed. Oh yeah, for sure. We land in Azizlar and we wander around and find out more about, one of the biggest lore parts there that is kind of ignored until actually more recently is Tiamat being there, which is one of the Mericidian dragons. But obviously we find out more, not just about like the dragons, but about the Alligans and etc. etc. And we find out that Forden, his whole plan, the Pope, I can't actually remember his name, the Archbishop, that's his name, Archbishop. He is actually after the power of the Warren Triad. So basically, he's Kafka. Honestly, he's after the he's after the power at the center of Azizlar. So we eventually get there with the help of Midgard Samir, who becomes our flyer mount, which I thought was actually a really cool little mount to get. One thing Heavensward did really well was had lots of mounts.
Yeah. 2 mounts, I think, through story. Just through story.
Yeah, which I thought was nice. It was more than we had really until that point. Yeah. So we go to the center ship and we do a dungeon and we deal with Lahabrea and Igiorin, and then we defeat. I think it's Igiorin. We defeat and we trap her in the Aura site. Pardon?
I could never say her name. So
yeah. But yeah, we trap her and deal with her. And then La Brea, in his hubris, goes towards Forden, and Forden yeets La Brea. And that's, as far as we know, the end of La Brea, but pending, just in case, of Endwalker. I don't want this to bite me in the ass if someone is watching this 2 years down the line. So then we fight Forden, and we defeat him, because of course we do, with the Warrior Light. Of course, I've missed the whole part about us slowly getting our power back as well. As I say, apologies, my memory's garbage. And just after we defeat Forden and find out about the two eyes of Nidhogg and blah, 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 we get them together, and Estinian grabs them and turns into Nidhogg like a fucking idiot. Why he picked them both up in the first place is beyond me, and didn't expect it to go wrong. So after that, obviously, everyone's like, oh yeah, no, there's peace, and we just ignore the fact that Nidhogg's fucked off for some reason. We go back to Ishgard, and happy ending for everyone. Ishgard's now free of the tyranny of the religion, which was just such a weird ending. I think in retrospect, a lot of what we think is great about Heavensward, there's some really weird moments in there, like the Legion and the ending. Like, as I say, it just wasn't really a happy ever after. Estinian's now Nidhogg, Nidhogg's back. But that was the ending for 6.0. From there, we do the whole peace treaty talks and all that, and Ishgard doesn't like it, and then some of the dragons aren't really fond of it, and one sec, I'm trying to.
Oh.
But yeah, so we do the peace talks, and that goes horribly because Nidhogg obviously intervenes. Then I believe we go save Thancred at that point. We find out about Thancred being about. I don't know if that's that early, but I know we'd do that at some point. Post-patch wise, it's kind of a big jumble in my head, but you have the Nidhogg story. We're basically chasing after Nidhogg and try and do that. You have the story bringing Thancred back. You have the Warriors of Darkness, and then we also have obviously this ongoing story of Ilberd and the Crystal Braves. So obviously we do the Dragonsong War. We deal with dragons and etc. We eventually defeat Nidhogg properly and free Estinian with the power of friendship, basically. Like typical anime. We meet Ardbert and the Warriors of Darkness, and we deal with them essentially. We send them back to whence they came with the help of Minfilia as the Prophet of Light, I think is the name of it. Oracle of Light, that's what her name is.
Oracle.
And then we go into probably one of the best narratives of Heavensward, which was obviously the story with Ilberd and the Crystal Braves leading to the Alamegan War. And then in one of the most epic cutscenes, we get to see Omega and Shinryu have a huge fight above Baelsar's wall, which was awesome. Papalymo died just before that. As I say, this is a really poor explanation, but I'm doing my best. And then just after the Omega and Shinryu fight, we see one of the most pointless cutscenes in history, which is Yida isn't actually Yida. She's Lys all along, never was Yida. And it added nothing to the story except for a character that I absolutely fucking hate and destroyed one of my favorite characters. I have to say it. Yida was great in Lys Can Fuck Herself. But that's like a really bad general synopsis of the story of Heavensward. So I actually need to quickly take a loo. So I'm going to leave Devin to quickly talk about the story if he wants, or Slandy, or Logix. One of them's going to have to take the lead in my absence. Take it away, one of you, and then I'll leave safely.
I'll let one of y'all.
Go, Logix. You're the one who finished it most recently.
And no one goes.
I mean, I don't really remember much of it because I've obviously Stormblood, so it's not as fresh for me as it should be.
The only thing I remember is the cutscene after the vault.
Lope. No, just kidding.
But yeah, the cutscene you just mentioned about the fight between Omega and the big mech dragon was pretty cool. I had to rewatch that recently because I was
Yeah,
just
it's
like,
a
you know
good one to
what,
watch.
too good.
Mhm.
The attacks are pretty hard hitting.
That's the one that leads to Papa Limo doing the same thing Louis Swa did with Bahamut back in A Realm Reborn, which was the
Yeah, I thought
callback for that.
they were intentionally drawing some parallels there.
So it's a huge moment. But I can kind of agree with the whole like, why did they turn Ida into Lise? I'm not sure. It was, I mean, all they
It was just
needed to
kind
do was
of
reveal her face. So, but I guess they were trying to get purpose behind why would she reveal her face? Why was she hiding it the whole time? They alluded to some things prior to that, so I don't know. I have different opinions about Lise, but it's because of Stormblood, so I don't want to go into that.
That's that. Well, I see. Obviously, I don't know what you've been talking about. I heard the science at first, but when they did it, when they changed Yida, I was like, maybe I can get behind this. But I was such a Yida fan. Like Yida was my favorite Scion, and they just did it, and I was like, why? Like, what's the? And obviously, we know thanks to Stormblood why, but we can't go fully into that because of
Yeah, this whole nother
logic.
thing.
Yeah, that's for when we visited Stormblood. But it was just at the time, it was so just. It also kind of like slowed. I wouldn't say slow, but it ruined the moment of the story we just had, the Omega and Shinryu fight, which, as I say, no matter what you say, is still probably one of the best cinematics we've had to this day. Like, it was such a cool moment.
Yeah, it's probably the time it ruined it. Like because obviously you've just got that epic stuff happening, and then oh by the way, I'm not really who you thought I was. It's like if you did that maybe down, when nothing else was really happening, it might have had more of an impact as opposed to being
I
surrounded
think
by
there was
more epic reveals and stuff.
Yeah, I think there was no tie-in to Lise at all. Like we've had no prior knowledge. We just knew Ida. She was Ida the whole time. Like I said, there's only minor things alluding to this or that about her, and there's things like some dialogue between her and Papa Limo that happened. I think they mentioned something about a promise. But that was it. There was really nothing insinuating she was someone else. We didn't have any character build up or any like connection to like why was she Lise. We just kind of got kind of a lore dump of like this is why I hid my face and that was it. So it just kind of like I think gave purpose to her face reveal.
And then I think a bigger kind of like fuck you to like the player is then you get all the scions like, yeah, we knew all along, it's fine. And you just, as the warrior, you should be like the warrior of light's just, what the fuck are you on about? I haven't got a clue.
I know.
Like,
none of us knew.
so it's kind of like, is the warrior of light a bigger idiot than the scions? That's a fucking achievement. But yeah, as I say, there's some really weird moments in the whole. Like, I love Heavensward. I really do think Heavensward is one of the greatest selling points of Final Fantasy. Shadowbringers is better in my opinion, but Heavensward was good. It was great at its time. It was, as a lot of people once called it, it was basically the Wrath of the Lich King of Final Fantasy 14 for a long time. People were always like, "Oh, they'll never do better. There's no beating this," and it really was very Wrathy in like its style as well, with the cold, the icy stuff and the gothic kind of architecture. Like, it really did have that feel, and I think in its own way it did kind of like lean on that a little. I think they took a little influence maybe, and Yoshi's admitted in the past, sometimes he takes influence from WoW. But like, as I say, the Legion appearing, just why? It didn't add anything really to the Ishgard and Dragon Song or any of the stories really. Like, even to finish,
Guardians are still there.
yeah, that's pretty much what it felt like. Oh yeah, by the way, Guardians still exist. We're still here.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah,
They're
we
still
know.
bad.
Obviously they do use that little bit of narrative in one of the side quests, but in the main story, it just felt out of left field. And then, as I say, Estinian picking up the eyes was stupid. I don't know why we let him do that, but we did, and
It was his life goal, wasn't it? One that's his whole thing. Like eyes because they had the one, then they got the second one. So he was like, "All right, I'm the Dragon Slayer here. This is my duty." And then,
and then became the dragon.
Yeah.
But yeah, just some parts of the narrative I felt were janky. Like Bismarck when we first see him and see a clouds, and then you just fuck off and leave him. It's like, we are a primal slayer. Surely this is a big fucking deal to us. Like, I don't care what other narrative we got. Our biggest thing as the Warrior of Light, or at least at this point in the story, is that we kill primals because nobody fucking else can. Surely we should be going and fighting this big freaking cloud whale.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, look at Primal. Disregard.
yeah, it was. It was just like. So I think as good as the Heavensward is, there's some beats that were just missteps in my eyes. One of the things that we should probably talk about is the Warriors of Darkness, because obviously, as Shadowbringers players, we now understand that whole narrative a lot more. But I know a lot of people who obviously haven't, or at the time they hadn't, reached Shadowbringers, and they didn't understand the whole Warriors of Darkness stuff. And a lot of people hate the Warriors of Darkness their first time going through. So I'm curious what your opinions all are. Let's start with you, Devin.
Well, I liked it because I mean it was kind of predictable to have like this Warriors of Darkness when you're Warriors of Light. But I still kind of liked it because we got to see it brought those characters to for me at least. It brought the characters we saw from the first Realm Reborn cinematic into the game with us because it's like we can immediately see. You had the main warrior and then you had the others. You're like, okay, they're from the cinematic. Even you had no prior knowledge of anything or the knowledge we have now. To me, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. We have this interaction with them. I guess I don't know. I kind of enjoyed it. I think it was kind of a nice. So some it may have been like a distraction for what was mainly going on, but to me it was kind of like because I mean they introduced them at the very end of 3.0 in that end scene with Elidibus on the moon. So kind of getting that going on in the game, I really actually kind of liked it, and then of course I felt like there was something they needed to revisit with it, and they never did until much later. But
Sunny, I'm going to ask you next because I feel like if anyone's going to hate it, it's going to be you.
Why?
You have no taste in character. You hate good characters.
I mean, it got the word darkness in it. Nope.
So you did like it.
I actually did. I think one of the reasons is why I like it is that it's kind of the opposite of what we are. When you first met the group, it is like it's their own sign group because it has all the classes together, and then it had the Warrior of Darkness for them as well, leading them and everything. So it was like completely opposite of what you are in that sense, and that actually caught my attention as well. It was quite interesting to see.
What about you, Logix? What's your opinion on the Warriors of Darkness?
Well, I initially hated them, and obviously then you get to find out the reason for what they're doing, and you're like, I guess I can kind of see it, from their perspective, and they, that made me hate them a little less. I was, as Slandy was saying, it's kind of like, oh, what would have happened if we had been like the Warrior of Light had been gone down a different route and been used for, or become evil, to see what would have become of them, essentially. So I thought it was pretty cool. But obviously,
Well,
as I say, I didn't like them very much just because of their attitude towards us.
we can't spoil it for you, but essentially, hold that thought is all I can say. For me personally, like not so much the characters, but the narrative for me was very interesting because it was the first time that we pretty much got confirmation that all light is not good. Like, and I'm not on about like what they did, but Elidibus himself was like, you're listing the world too much into light now as opposed to dark. and you're fucking the balance of everything. And like obviously that didn't really become fully relevant until Shadowbringers, spoilers. But it was nice to finally get confirmation that it wasn't light good, dark bad. It was like, there's a balance to it all. And like anyone who knows Square Enix knows that there would have been a balanced system anyway. They've never really done always light good, dark bad, but it was just nice to get actual confirmation via the narrative at last. So that's why I like the Warriors of Darkness, and I love the design. There's not too much I can say without thinking of Shadowbringers stuff with them, so I can't really say too much. But I even before that, I loved Ardbert, the leader of the fuckers. So I missed a bit of the story, and I don't know if it really comes into the trials section, but I feel like we have to talk about this as well. Not just from a story way, but a gameplay way. Ravana. What's everyone's opinions on Ravana? I'll start with you first, System Logics.
I can't remember which one that is. You'll have to jog my memory.
Bug dude with tons of swords.
Bug dude with tons of swords. Yes. Essentially, yeah.
The first one, isn't it? The first trial.
Star Wars.
Yeah, the first trial.
I thought he was really cool. I thought he was a badass. There's no other way of putting it. And obviously the attack you get is Blue Mage from him, I believe.
Yes, Pakana. That's
obviously really, really good.
That's more modern content, but yeah. What is your opinion on Ravana and Slandy? Although I'm supposing you've skipped a lot, so at that point, so.
I actually think you said to me not to skip it, and I didn't. For once I listened to Noob. But I can't remember too much, but I think, wasn't it the fight you got help from someone else as well?
Shiva technically fights him first, but you don't really get help.
Okay.
She gets her ass handed to it like a little bitch.
Oof. So that was what I remembered of that, I guess. But yeah, his design with all the base and everything, what I can remember of, was actually pretty amazing. So
yeah, the entrance was good as well, with the sword spinning around, making the big circle.
So, what about you, Devin? Your opinion on Ravana?
I feel like, it's a great fight. It was a great introduction. I feel like through the trial, I always hear his voice, because it's such a dominating factor during the trial.
As Raya says in chat, rejoice in the glory of combat.
Exactly. Right. So, I every time I go through that, it's like it's especially if I ever get it. I think I got it a few times with roulettes. But anytime I've run it. Of course, you run it for the extreme version for a mount. So it just was always fun to help my static when we were mount farming to go through that several times. Just like, you know what? I don't mind he's yelling at me the whole time. This is a great fight. And so
I think for me, the big thing about Ravana is obviously I was an Around Reborn player, so I played one that was current. And shooting Around Reborn was pretty cool. I loved Trials, and they were always kind of cool. Trials were actually what sold the game to me over WoW at first. I loved the idea of just having these bosses I could go in and face as a boss. I didn't have to faff around with trash mobs, or I just went in and fought the bosses. Because obviously at that time, raids actually still had mobs in Final Fantasy 14. Mm-hmm. But Ravana was the first time where we saw where the game could go. Because we had these, Shiva was probably the next closest, but we had these moments in Trials where, there was a little cinematography was quite good in them, and they kind of told the story through the fight. But Ravana was the first one with that transition phase that sold the fucking game.
True.
Just the switch in music, the whole moment where you're getting lifted up and him spinning his swords around, just the whole moment was so awesome. It really, really just, as I say, it not even just from a narrative point of view, although it did help tell the story, and trials later in the game in Shadowbringers and that really learned to build on that and really tell the story. But as of just Heavensward, it showed us where we were going visually with the game to help tell the story. And as you said, with Forden, like that was even a massive step up with everything that went on there. Like the game with the trials, there's an exception, but with the trials mostly in Heavensward, they really just kept showing us new cinematography. I know I've moved on to the trials section when I'm going to be on the story section still, but always happens. The exception to the rule is Bismarck. Bismarck can go fuck himself. Shit fight. I really just think it was boring. There was no, even when it was current.
More mobs than anything, than actually fighting him. And then just mitigated damage, and healers healed through damage. So it didn't really. It was the least like involved with this primal than any of them. So, and like it was kind of cool. The what did they call the little harpoons? The dragon something. I forget the name now.
Dragon Killers, I think is the name.
Killer, something like that, and you have to do it each side. You pull them in. I was like, that was kind of a cool thing to do, but it didn't really go further than that. It was just like it kept popping up other mobs, and it's just like, oh, down these mobs and shoot the harpoons, and then if you fight it synced, I think it depends on how fast your DPS each time you pull them in, but it was still kind of boring because that was kind of rinse repeat the whole time.
So before we move on, does anyone else have out there want to talk about with the story in general? I'm going to take the resigning silence as a no. So before we move into like the raids and stuff like that, we're going to talk about something that Sandy probably has nothing to add because I don't think he's even started this quest line yet. So we forgive you, Sandy, for opting out of being able to speak here because we know you haven't done it, but we don't forgive you for not starting the storyline, and you need to get it done as soon as you can. So we're going to talk about Hildebrand. What is people's opinions of Hildebrand in Heavensward? I'll start with you, Devin, because I know Logic will keep his Hildebrand thoughts forever.
I mean, Hildebrand's just good all around. I feel like the Hildebrand Heavensward had some good moments. I'm trying to remember it because I was more impacted by the Realm Reborn version and the Stormblood version than I was the Heavensward. So I think the Heavensward is a little lower on the list for me. But still, I think the other part is like, there was some good rewards you usually get from that. I think this one didn't really have any reward from it.
There was one minion that you got at the very end. That was it.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, so that was disappointing. But like still overall the tone of Hildebrand was maintained, that comedic side that Hildebrand brings to like a storytelling element. Still very much there. But that's just where I'm at. I just feel like I was the least impacted by that versus what came before. I feel like we got a lot more from A Realm Reborn, but that one took forever to go through, I think. Versus Heavensward, I feel like was a lot shorter.
What about you, Logic? So I remember you sort of having the same opinion with the Heavensward one. You loved Hildebrand, so.
Yeah, I thought it was a little less funny than the other one. But obviously you get to see what how terrifying Godbert's wife is when she's angry. That one cutscene where he says something to piss her off, and
I think he calls her grandma or something.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Then jaws drop, and we just turn around and she's there with a frying pan and big red glowing eyes and stuff, just ready to murder him. Just run off. But yeah, I think overall it wasn't as funny, which kind of threw me off a little bit. Because it felt like they were being a little more serious, him taking on the responsibility that he does. Although obviously he does take it over the top because it's Hildebrand. Yeah.
My personal opinion with it was I remember doing it for the first time and I was like, where's the rewards? Where's the trials? And like not just and as you say, even the narrative, it was just a little less funny and a little less long, and I don't think it was particularly bad. I still think it was good. It was just from what we'd had just before that, it was such a step down. And I think that's the problem with Square Enix is they're always setting the bar so high, but sometimes they are going to slip, and something's going to be, a little less than it was before. I don't think they'll do it with Endwalker before anyone starts to get scared about that, but at least in the respect of what we're talking about right now, Hildebrand for Heavensward was a step down. I'm sure FF9 fans loved it with the VV minion. Personally, I loved the minion. I don't like
Right.
FF9, but I loved VV from FF9. So the little VV reference was nice. There was a cool little part that you'd like draw a picture on a wall in Idleshire, and that's still there if you go to Idleshire now. Whereas people who haven't done the quest line won't have that there. And I thought, small thing, but quite cool. But overall, yeah, the story didn't reward you as much in funny moments as the prior one did, and then the actual rewards didn't reward you as much with the funny moments. So I don't think you have out to add, do you, Sandy? You didn't do Hildebrand yet.
I think I've done the 3 first quiz in Realm Reborn, but
We were just all universally shamed Slandy.
You need to do some Hildebrand. It took Rick a while to do Hildebrand too, though, so we had to really go on to him.
well, Rick, if you're watching this down the line, shame. Get it done faster.
Shame.
Shame.
He's done now, but he it took. I
Cheers,
think it
Chief.
went till the end.
No, apparently we're hydrating. So who we cheersing, Slandy?
Chief, where?
Oh, cheers, Chief. Doesn't tell me on my fucking Twitch. I just say myself as ass. I'm using my PlayStation to show me the chat. Using my tablet to bloody record me. It's just an awful setup. So moving on from Hildy, short as that was, but unfortunately that's Hildebrand's fault. We move on to Alexander, probably one of the coolest raids. Or at least, honestly, I say this, but all the raids have been kind of cool in their own way, with the exception. No, in their own way. But Alexander, what's your opinion on that, Devin? I believe Logix is frozen. Before we continue.
Yeah, I have. OBS seems to have
Yeah,
crashed.
he did
Bear with me a
freeze.
second.
Do you want to just quickly camera? All right, we'll let you.
I guess not.
So long as you can hear, Devin, if you want to continue whilst he sorts that.
I love Alexander. I think the first. Well, yeah, I think he was in the first time I experienced him in a Final Fantasy game was Final Fantasy VIII, because it was my first game. And then he played such a huge part in 9. That one I came into what's the name of the zone? I can't remember the name of the zone now.
Dravanian
Highlands, Hinterlands, yeah. So I just know when I came there and he's like dead center, they had the whole thing. I was like, this is Alexander. And then like I got to that point in the story where, you talk with Sid and the Ironworks, and then this like you have this whole thing, and I was like, what is this? And I thought was at first just dungeons. I didn't realize it was a whole raid series at first. It's a very different setup than what I was used to. But then I didn't run it all the way through because I was also still playing the story. I was gone into Stormblood. I think one of my friends made this Shadowbringer. She was like, you gotta get the Shadowbringers. And I was like, try not to rush, but like, and I wanted to run with certain people. So it was kind of scattered when I did go through Alexander. So I know I kind of like started it and then I didn't finish it until later. But just like that whole series, just like in some of the story beats that were in it, I had to go back and see some of the story to what I missed. I was like, oh, there's some really good stuff here. It was really different because it was these just like, it kind of felt like it was going into a dungeon, but it was actually just like a big boss fight, almost like that. And then I kept going through and I was like, wait a minute, there's a whole series of things that go on here. And then the very end of it, just chef kiss. That fight and everything. Not a super hard fight, especially by today's standards, but like still was kind of exciting. And then I think I got the minion on the first time I did it, so I was really happy.
Slandy, I'm gonna come to you because I'm not sure if we're even gonna get out from you. Did you actually do Alexander?
I don't think so. It's not a part of main quest, is it?
No.
No.
We need.
Then I didn't.
At
It's
some
the raid
point,
series.
at some point, Sandy, we need to just take you through everything. It's been the rule for Logic. Logic isn't literally. I refuse to allow him to move on to the next expansion until he's done with the side content. So, Logic's your opinion on Alexander, and your thoughts.
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was awesome. I liked the sort of steampunkish vibe that it all gave off. I loved the enemies, and you know the time related stuff. Obviously, they kind of had a bit of a paradox going on, but I guess we just ignore that because that's usually what you do with anything time related if there's paradoxes. But I thought it was all. I liked all of it.
In fairness to the story, though, that's kind of the point with Alexander. Like, he's making the time paradoxes.
Mhm.
So, it's kind of, self-inflicted.
Yeah, the part in the fight where he freezes time for a moment is just so good.
It was pretty much everything you'd want in a boss, personally. You like your timey-wimey stuff, and you like your steampunky stuff, so... I feel like...
Yeah, they had a good mix of all of the best things, I think.
I should note that Logic, I don't think... I could be wrong, he could change my mind here, but I don't think you've played really any Final Fantasy fully through before, have you, before this?
No.
Yeah. Have you even touched a Final Fantasy before this one?
No.
I think so. I mean, I've probably been around when you were playing some, back in the day, but I personally have not.
I feel like I've failed as a Final Fantasy fan for not forcing you to play more Final Fantasy. But yeah, I loved the Alexander, not just like aesthetically, but even narratively. It had one of my favorite races involved in the storylines, the goblins. You just can't go wrong with Gobby Speaks. Uplander hijinks with Alexander.
I love
They are
always
great.
doing the voices for those. Yeah, the goblins are fun to always try to do little voices for.
The only part of Alexander I don't think I actually liked was the Aura character.
Mhm.
It's not that I thought she was bad. I just thought, especially knowing what we know about the law now, it's like, what was she doing there in the first place? It's just what we
I was
knew
so
of, like,
disconnected from her the whole time.
yeah. And like at first, she's not like got a huge personality. She's not funny. She's not really decent. She's just kind of there. And it's like they could have easily just done that with her character with a goblin. Like I feel like it was just showing off the new race kind of deal. Obviously,
We didn't get a whole lot of aura throughout Heavensward. Like they were the new race for that expansion, and I think that was probably, like you said, it's probably a way to showcase a new race in some way in the world because they weren't really involved through the story.
yeah, I think the only one that's really heavily involved with any of the stories in Heavensward would be, I can't remember his fucking name, but it's
Are
the
you talking about Yugiri?
the Dark
No,
Knight
okay.
storyline.
Oh yes, okay. I haven't played through all of that, but yes.
Basically, there's one there in the Heavensward story part of that, and he's pretty cool. But the lore behind him is that his like tribe was like one of the only there were like one of the Zayla tribes that had come over, and basically the Ishgardians had fought them Dravanians, and so killed like all the tribe except for him. So it made me wonder, what's this other fucking Zayla doing here then?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the problem. There was just a few moments where I feel like they missed their own little Sidurgu. But there's a few moments where I feel like they just kind of missed their own lore, and it's rare they do it in Final Fantasy. In fairness, it's rare cracks get through, but that was kind of one of them. Savage wise, I think I don't know. I think Devin may have done it synced. Have you? Question mark.
On Savage, I don't think I did a Savage because I didn't have. I know we're going back and should do some of the Savages for the mounts, but
Well,
part of me is kind of wanting to do it sync, especially with T out there now, and that being a big thing, just to be like, okay, what is that inspiration from?
Well, Logix has done the Savage, but he's done it unsynced, so he doesn't really have a good view of the Savage. He has the mounts, just didn't have a good view. I did a Savage obviously back in the day, and I've done it since unsynced as well, because obviously I've helped other people go in and get their stuff. But back in the day, Gordius, the first 4 fights, absolute fucking joke when they came out. Ray, it was like I don't think they quite like grasped what they needed to do for Savage at that point. And then it went to the other extreme. Midas came out, the second tier, and the final boss was so hard at the time it was basically an ultimate. Alexander 8 Savage was for the longest time one of the hardest fights in the game, and even to this day you still see people unsynced messing it up somehow. And then A12, the final tier came out, and it was much more balanced. Like some fights were hard, some fights were easier. And Alexander 9 to 12 Savage are really what kind of set the foundations for what we have as Savage now. It's really where they kind of learned where they'd gone wrong, what the steps were. So they were fun fights. Some were mechanically difficult, although like with everything on FF, it's just a matter of really getting used to it. Obviously, visually, just spectacular all the time. Alexander 12 Savage in particular, fantastic visual fight. As Logic said earlier, the time stopping and everything, that actually was like so important to like your placements and stuff like that. It was really cool. But I don't really think we have more to talk about on Alexander. So we're going to take a short little break. And then when we're back, we'll talk about the Sky Pirates, the Alliance Trilogy, the Trials, some of the side dungeons maybe, how the content's aged, crafting, extra questions, and all that. So we'll catch you on the Twitch side in 5 minutes.
Yes.
Welcome back, Pretty Casuals. I don't know why I'm calling you Pretty Casuals, it's just Casuals. Getting myself
Because they're pretty.
mixed. Yeah, exactly. See, you're all pretty now. You've all been promoted. From now on, I shall introduce every single podcast or stream I do with, "Hey, Pretty Casuals, you're so pretty." Thank you for sticking with us during that break, just so we could all loo or get drinks and stuff like that. We hope you did too. Did any of us actually do the break thing in the chat before we went on a break?
No.
I didn't think we did. We're
did,
terrible.
I did when I returned.
It's all right. Ray at Alpha's seen the behind the scenes. He knows that we're a completely professional little group of people here. Right, so Slandy may be quiet for this portion of the video because the stuff we have left to talk about is mostly side content, and Slandy is Slandy. So excuse him sitting in the corner being quiet. I think maybe Trials. I think Trials you might be able to say a little bit because you've at least done 3 of them.
Which
Wait, no, 4 of them. So the first one we're going to talk about is the Sky Pirates trilogy, or as I've always called it, the Void Ark trilogy. That's the Alliance raids, the Void Ark, the Weeping City of Mac, and Dun Scaife. I feel like Devin will probably keep his memory of those 3 in his head better, so I'm going to go with you first, Logic. So what was your opinion of the Alliance raids? They're the ones you did with Chief.
I thought they were pretty cool, I guess. I can't really remember a lot about them. Ghost ships, enough said, right? But yeah, I enjoyed them. I thought it was a different sort of change of style and pace with the whole Sky Pirate theme. And obviously, the characters were pretty good.
Pretty good. Pretty casual.
Yeah, pretty casual.
So we'll move on to you, Devin, considering that was that.
So I actually didn't do these until later. I didn't realize I missed them.
Shame.
So I was sitting there like, "Did you do Void Ark?" I was like, "What?" And then I went and did him. I was like, "I'm gonna have this whole time." I can never say his name right all the time, but he's still one of my favorite summons in Final Fantasy VIII. It's Diablos. Or Diabolos, I think. Yeah, something like that. It's spelled like Diabolos or something like that, but I think everyone says Diablos. I love to summon an 8 because of one of the things that he does. He like reaches up in this dark void and he like pulls it down and like stretches before it just flies at the ground and squishes people. So having him kind of like the center of this whole thing, I was like invested. So I was like, why didn't I do this sooner? And it really threw me off. Make sure I remember it. This is the one with Kate Sith, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
The
Okay.
very
Sorry,
weird Kate Sith.
Yes, that was like it's like I'm Kate Sith. I'm like I played 7. Like it was more like a familiar in this. I think it was the big thing than he was like an actual kind of like the Kate Sith would get in 7. So that threw me off. But I think it was more invested to see with like I saw the Sky Pirates and they had that whole thing and how that went down was really cool. But I was all about Diablos on that. Just one of my favorite summons from 8, and just the fact of how like they animated him through that, I was like, man, I just want more of him. Just give me him the whole time. So
one of the things that I'll say about the actual Sky Pirate content of it is, like with a lot of Heavensward, as I was saying with the story earlier, there was some parts where it just felt janky, and I feel like the Sky Pirates part to this was the janky part. I feel like they could have easily done like, we team up with some black mages or some white mages or something like that, like a little renegade group, because it was really more about the war of Amdapor and Maki. Like it was about Voidsen and the Maki, and like less Amdapor, but more mainly the Maki and the Voidsen. And then to add this Sky Pirate component all on top, it was like, why? Like, obviously because they just knew that people would like lose their brains over Sky Pirates. So I suppose marketing-wise, it was the wise idea. But as I say, I just feel like the more investment in the story, at least for me personally, was the Maki and Voidsen stuff, because I love the Void lore in general. As I said before, I'm an RP, so a lot of my RP back in the day was to do with the Void Scent. So I was always invested when we had more Void Scent lore, and especially after coming off Crystal Tower, which had some Void Scent lore, it was just like, oh, even more, thank God. And one of the things I actually liked about the Sky Pirates storyline is there was little nods to the side content you'd done with Diablos and Ferdiad I believe, is in Dunscape. Yeah, I think he's in Dunscape as well as Diablos. And they kind of reference like, oh, I noticed some familiar faces here, and it's because Ferdiad and obviously Diablos were both bosses in the lost city of Amdapor and Amdapor Keep. So there was actually some reference to that, which I thought was really cool. It wasn't quite as a direct nod as the special dialogues you get with Estinian, but it was nice that there was like little nods to the people who'd done side content back in the Realm Reborn. I think Ozma was such a fucking cool addition in the Weeping City of Mac. I think anyone who is like a fan of, 9 will love Ozma. Such a shame that we had to wait till Stormblood to get him as a mount, they should have introduced mounts back in Alliance raids. That would have been genius. I loved Scafatch as well, and a lot of the armor sets in the Void Arc trilogy, as I call it, was really good. Really step up. The fights were much more appealing, and there's little lore nods for people who like understand it, like the Proto Ultima that was in Dunscape. Dunscape really was, in my opinion, the best of the trilogy, followed by the Weeping City, and then Void Arc was kind of weak. Void Arc actually fell back in the day when it was current to the same problem Tier 1 of Alexander fell to, in that it was way too easy. And then Weeping City, back in its day, actually fell to the same problem as Midas. It was way too hard. The difference was when everyone complained that the Weeping City was too hard and became the meme of the Wiping City, Yoshi P actually basically came out and said, we're not going to change it. And I thought that was such a good move. Like, people eventually obviously just learned, and it was easier because people learned. But it really was a case of like people were just not invested in putting in the effort to learn. Yoshi was like, just put in the effort. We're not nerfing it.
I heard the stories of that, of what that was like back in the day that people just would wipe.
Yeah, as I say, it became the wiping city of Mac for a long time. There was some cool mechanics to introduce that, and I feel like Alliance raids in general, I think, is a good place to introduce a mechanic that you're not sure if you want to keep about, and then move it into content later. Like there was a mechanic in Weeping City, which was you'd get like a doom on you or a zombification or something, and if you didn't stand in something, you'd actually basically die. Or it was more you had to go stand in something to get the zombification, so this attack didn't kill you. And I thought that was pretty cool. Nice little nod to some of the previous Final Fantasy games where zombie is like a defect, wherein if you get healed, you get absolutely destroyed. And I think there's really a lot to say about the Sky Pirates. I will be honest, I feel like the story is like, as I say, with the Sky Pirates is fairly forgettable. At least, as I say, I did it back in the day, so I forget most things. But even then, even by those standards, I feel like that story was probably one of the more forgettable things about Heavensward. I wasn't particularly like mega hyped when they announced it, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the the fights and stuff like that, and the raids themselves. But I feel like the story was just the weakest part. I don't know if either of you two have more to say on the Sky Pirates trilogy.
I know it's very wordy compared to other Alliance raids, so I felt like there was a lot of reading, and that's probably where I also disconnect, because there was like a lot of like they were trying to do, and I was just like, give me more Diablos, like just give me more of them, give me more of going in and dealing with all that. So that's probably part of it. Was also I did it late. I didn't actually do it when I first went through Heavensward, so, and I didn't realize I missed it. So,
but yeah, so I'm assuming you have nothing more logic on that.
No.
So now we move on to the trials, and to begin with, we'll talk about the 4 trials that are pretty much mandatory. So someone can have at least some words, and then we'll move on to the 3 that are optional. So obviously, the first fight is Ravana, and we spoke about that earlier. We spoke about Bismarck, and I don't think there's really much any of us have to add on that. As we said, it's probably one of the more forgetful fights of the whole game. I know you said your 2 pence on it, but I'd like to hear both of these two. Forden's Reign, or Knights of the Round, as some people call it. I forget what the actual fight is called. I think it's like Containment Bay, something or another. I could be wrong. But we'll start with you, Sandy. What do you think of the Knights of the Round fight?
Can't actually remember it at all.
Sometimes I regret starting this channel with you. God's sake, Slandy. I did it right when it was in the day, and I still at least remember some bits. You're terrible, you really are.
I know, sorry.
It's literally the final boss of this the 3.0 narrative. What is wrong with you?
Everything.
Logics, the Knights of the Round fight, opinions, thoughts.
The Knights of the Round Table, yes. I liked it. As Freya was saying when we were doing it, it's visually a really good fight. I kind of liked that there was an attack, where there was one of them fires a lance at you from behind, and behind the main guy there's obviously the Dragoon Eye, or Dragon Eye, sorry. And obviously if you dodge that attack, then he would be lancing the eye, which I thought was kind of cool. And yeah, it was a good fight. I don't remember a great deal of like detail about it, because obviously I would need to do it a lot more. But yeah, I enjoyed it quite a lot.
My 2 cents on it is that I loved it as a fight, but as an FF7 fan, I hated it as a reference. And the reason is not that I hated them having Knights of the Round in the game. My problem with it is we had an FF7 reference, and we didn't get any FF7 music. and I would stand by that to this day. There's so much FF7 references, and we don't have any other music, and it's such a missed opportunity. And fuck you, bring it in. I'm sure there's reasons why, but I don't care. We should have FF7 music.
I feel like with FF7 and 14, there really hasn't been much collab like we got with 15 recently. So I don't know, and I know they've given us like different things. Like now you can buy the bike, you can get with your subscription, you can get the cloud outfit, but the few calls they've done to 7, it feels like they've been very well placed. But like there hasn't been much to really. I don't know if they're trying to keep that separate because of how 7 is with the whole fan base. I don't know. I just feel like, but I can understand what you're saying because it'd be really nice to have some of that in there.
Although, and honestly, I feel like 7 needs to look out because 14 these days is kind of stealing its spot as probably the more famous FF game. So Nidhogg is the other one that Sandy can actually have an opinion on. Sandy, we'll let you go first again. I'm assuming you've forgotten about that too.
Maybe.
This is the one with. This is the one with Justinian in it.
the one on the bridge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't actually remember the entire fight, but I remember it was amazing, and there's some flashbacks in it, which brings up some good memories, but I can't really place them anywhere apart from that. I'm a disappointment, no.
See, what we need is a expansion raid or something like that, or a trial where it involves zombies, and then we'd have Sandy's full attention. We'd be fine. So, Logic, I'm sure you remember the Nidhogg fight at least.
Yeah, it was epic. I kind of feel like there should have been more destruction to the sort of area that you're in. But I really liked the fact that obviously, the two dragons are fighting eventually. I can't remember if that's actually in, the exact fight when you're in it, or if that's
No,
afterwards.
it's pre-fight.
Yeah, so they kind of just go off into some other dimension, don't they, for a moment as they're fighting, and then they come back out.
If you mean the sky, yes.
I can't remember if that's I can't remember exactly, but there's a bit where I think you can't see what's happening or something. You can just see sort of that they're fighting, and then there's a lot of like clouds of smoke happening and stuff, and then they come back out, which I rather liked. And then obviously you've got the part with Estinian in it being, Estinian.
I wish you could get that Nidhogg Estinian armor for dragoons.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You mean the red version?
Yeah. But with all the bits coming off it as well. Like, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
the dragon eyes on the arms. Yeah. I think I'd said when he initially changed into that form that he'd applied glamour or something. That he dyed his armor like a bit. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what I said, but something along those lines.
So what's your opinion of the final steps of faith, as Raya has been trying to indicate that I should say? Devin?
I agree with Raya, though. Dude, just such a good ending to that whole story. Because that was, it's the phase that really gets me. It's my favorite part. Even if you run unsynced on the extreme version or the minstrel ballad version of it, Estinian transformation, and you kind of like fight him in this kind of like, I don't know, it's really interesting that he goes like, obviously ends up being big Nidhogg and kind of like supercharged up at the very end, but like when he goes from big Nidhogg to like, oh, there's Estinian, he's still there and part of everything, and you fight through this really amazing transformed version of him that just I think had really good mechanics over the rest of the fight. I kind of wish it kind of ended with that. I hit one of my kids' toys down on my feet. Sorry. And then, but I don't know. Just that whole part, I just want to sit in it. And then the fact that it starts off with Dragon Song, it's always a good way to go too. Dragon Song kind of being the start in that fight. You're like, oh, this is it. Like and then it goes into the pretty epic music at the very end. But I know when you run it unsync, we don't get enough dragon song.
It's another one of these fights where it like tells a story as it's going along, and the music and the visuals help do that. And as I say, I think that's Final Fantasy's strongest selling point. I hate to be a negative person right now, but I was looking when I watched the World of Warcraft recent patch trailer, and I was thinking about my own days doing the fights. The fights in WoW, and even a lot of other like games, not just WoW in general. I'm not just going to shit on that, but a lot of fights. The fights, there's probably better mechanics in people's opinions, but there's not. They don't tell the story through a fight like Final Fantasy does, and I think that's Final Fantasy's strongest point. Always is their story. So being able to tell these stories through a fight is such a great thing. And Dragon Song, Final Steps of Faith, and Dragon Song, the song, and the transformations, and having to deal with Vistinian, all of that, I feel is just such a good way to tell a story through just fighting mechanics. So I think Nidhogg was definitely the strongest point of that in Heavensward, is telling the story through the fight. And as we know, as me, you, and Standy particularly, it gets even better going forward. So Heavensward is like the foundation of telling really good narratives through the fights. But moving, we're still on trios, but moving on to the three that Slandy will have nothing to say about. The Warring Triad. I'm assuming you've done these, Devin, before we go into it.
Those I did do.
So the Warring Triad story, I thought, was a very nice way to tie up regular, and really it gave some reasoning behind why they brought the Sixth Legion and the Garleans into the narrative in the first place. So that was really good in the fact that we got to really wrap up his story, and it ended really well. I think it was the first Garlean to ever really, because there's people of Gaius now, but at the time, it isn't quite what his fame is now. So Regular was the first Garlean to really get a decent narrative for himself, and I thought that was really, really good. But then, obviously, beyond that, as someone who started on Final Fantasy VI, the Warring Triad for me was just such a moment, and I loved it. And not just that, but like they took probably my favorite Garlean, put them in my favorite Final Fantasy, and referenced them in there, and then my favorite like lore location in Final Fantasy 14, which is Miracidia, and they peppered that in there. It's just like, oh my god, stop it! I can only love something so much. So the first boss we have is Sephiroth, and we get introduced to the fight with the FF6 music, and then you fight a little Diddy version of him, and there's a few mechanics here and there, and then you fight a few mobs, and he jumps off the back of the platform, and then we get big Sephiroth. And this is the first time I think we actually see something of that scale visually in a fight. Like, I don't think Alexander had done out quite that big just yet. It wasn't like because I don't think it's till big. Yeah, Sephiroth was like the first introduction to this big kind of thing. And obviously we have plenty of that now, but at the time it was like, oh boy. And Fiend is such a good soundtrack, and the Mount doesn't play it, and it annoys me so much.
Yeah, it doesn't play it.
I'm an FF6 fan, and I would trade the FF6 boss theme for that fucking Fiend music in a heartbeat. It is one of my favorite tracks in the game. But yeah, I will talk about Sephiroth and then do the others. So I'm going to go with you, Devin, first. Your opinions on that whole shebang.
My biggest memory with this is the fact that I was running this with another group of people, not my static I have now, but another group of people. And, he does the fall off, kind of falls backwards, off the platform. They were like, all right, that's it. And they did it so perfectly that they almost convinced me that was the whole fight. I was like, that can't be the whole fight. There's no way. And you see these hands come up and just he climbs up and he's this huge thing. And I was like, why are you lying to me? I was so, but then I was in awe. And then I also remember messing up the mechanics with the he does the orbs, which side you stand on, and how I think to this day I still don't fully grasp the exact mechanic. I just kind of lucked my way into it. But I think that was the first one that I really felt like, especially on the extreme, where I was like, I still kind of struggle and kind of like learn, oh, okay, mechanics are very important in some of these fights. So, but yeah, that was and then of course cue all the Sephiroth joke because he's a one letter away from that. Everyone kept trying to do.
Even though
make
Sephiroth came first, that's my
He
least
did come
favorite part
first.
about that.
Mhm.
Sephiroth is the imposter.
Yeah, that's
Shame
it.
people.
Everyone kept making that joke. I was like, obviously it's a different guy. It's not even close.
So,
But
what
yeah,
is your
I
opinion
like
on
that
that?
fight.
What is your opinion on that one then, Logix?
Well, of course, the part that I remember is also the transition. We've seen that before in various media, like I think Marty McFly in Back to the Future even does it. Where he jumps off a rooftop and then up he comes a moment later. I kind of saw that come in, but obviously it's badass. The arena is really good as well. The sort of overgrown aesthetic of it kind of reminded me of something from Destiny that I'd really enjoyed quite a while ago. But yeah, I thought it was a good fight. I mean, obviously I don't understand the mechanics, so I can't really talk about them. But yeah,
You're just doing everything in your way to try and ruin Sephiroth for me. First Back to the Future and then Destiny. Couldn't just leave my game alone, could you?
well,
Wounded. But then we deal with Sephiroth, and then we move on to the next one, which is Sophia. And this is the first fight. Let me just make sure. With the exception of Ravana, this is, I think, the only other fight in Heavensward where the arena is really important, because obviously it has the swinging. And the mechanic that Raya Alpha in the chat took forever to realize was doing wrong with the meteors, and how there's actually a blue line to one of the meteors, and that's the one that's the heavier side. He was just counting, and I was going, no, you want to be this side, and I just watch him slide off, and I'm like, he can feel called out in the chat. Sophia just I'm not a perv, but Sophia visually was really not just beautiful and sexy and stuff like that. But she was so cool looking, like with like the goldens and the whites and stuff like that. I thought she was really cool. I loved the black skin and stuff. I thought she was really cool visually. And then she has that weird head.
A weird head at the bottom, yeah.
Yeah, which is apparently her daughter of mine.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But whenever she said daughter of mine, it just took me to the Family of Blood Doctor Who episode, son of mine, father of mine, and all stuff like that. I was like, please stop. But overall, I love that fight. I love the swinging of the platform, and that was cool. I'll get your opinion on it, Devin.
I have a love-hating relationship with that because like you said, it's visually very beautiful. The interesting mechanic of having the stage that even if you run it unsynced, even on extreme, it can really mess up your party. So I kind of like that there's that element you have to pay attention to, but that's also the reason why it's like the hate side is that it took us forever at the time to figure out what side of the platform to be on. Besides the first one, I think was the only one that like does the same side, but it was the ones after that. It's like, wait, where do I go? And just kind of like get through the fight and then die at the very end. And just because we fell off because I couldn't figure that out for the longest time. But really, really good. I think I like the music. I'm trying to remember the music in that one. I feel like I really like the music in that one. I could sit in that for a while. And then just like you said, it was visually like really well done. And then I like the sound effects of like when she drops the weights.
Yeah, it makes the big ching kind of
just kind of like
sound.
that. The sound effects of that, it's like it is heavy and then it moves the whole stage, and so you kind of feel it in a way, and that's what really kind of stuck out to me. I really like that, but mechanically, I was like, I'm messing up way too much. So,
Logic, what is your opinion of the Sophia fight?
I thought it was really cool. I liked that. Obviously, she has the whole weighing your souls thing, which is kind of like fairly unique. I always like when there's a boss fight where they have something that makes them unique like that. And obviously the whole platform tilting. Again, I just love boss fights where the platform either moves around or tilts or rotates or lifts up or whatever. So you're not just still in this still place. And the whole arena's really nice looking as well, with all the gold, shiny stuff going on in the background.
The gaudiness, yeah.
Although I do think it's a little strange when there's when she's moving around and there's just her head sort of popping out of a little portal. I think that's a little odd looking, but obviously, And then obviously, I think there's also a part where she's sort of stacked on top of herself as well, sort of like a Russian doll type thing. But yeah, it's a really interesting fight to be in.
Yep. And so we beat Sophia, and then we move on to, I wouldn't say mechanically one of my favorite fights, but lore-wise, he's one of my favorites, and that's Zervan, the demon. You fight him, and obviously he so destroys his platform, and then you fight him down on the bottom, and he summons his centaur people. And honestly, as I say, the fight, really, in my opinion, is actually probably the weakest fight in the War and Triad trilogy. There's nothing like spectacularly memorable about it. Nothing that really is introduced for the first time there. It's just kind of, it's there. But as I say, lore-wise, I'm a big fan because he actually is narratively meant to be more powerful than Bahamut, but we're fighting him at like a fracture of his power. And like some of his voice lines I will always remember, like I love his good and evil, the war eternal, like the moment you fight him, and I am beyond your petty morality. He just says some great fucking lines, and like I can do the fight more than once because of those lines, but mechanically, as I say, in my opinion, he's the weakest of the three. I'll get your opinion, Devin. I notice you're nodding a bit.
I mean, it's definitely, I'm agreeing that it was the least impactful compared to the other two. I felt like it was a bit underplayed in a way. There was a lot of cool aesthetics with the stage, with the last area you go into, it kind of the fire everywhere. That can't go wrong with fire all around the place. But it was like I think there was a couple mechanics on that I still, when I did first play through it, I kind of like messed up on. It's one of the ones where he like dashes across, and it's just, I was still getting used to casting at the time, and so it's just like, oh, I gotta run, and I was still getting used to actually clicking sprint. That I would just not do it right. So but yeah, it was the least impactful because the other two, like, I felt like there was more to stick with, like Sephiroth and Sophia. There was just more to stick there with a lot more, and then Zervan was just a bit like, I felt like they could have done a whole lot more with him than after the build up from the other two. That was just like, and like you said, the story was very good, but just all the mechanics, it just wasn't as impactful, except for like, oh, this stage is about the fallout from under us.
What was your opinion, Lodrix?
I mean, I thought it was all right. I'm struggling to remember most of it. I just, because obviously we've done it recently. I think
Yeah,
he was knocking down bits of the platform, right, and we're just sort of move. We just kind of stand on the final spot already. And well, in your case, because you were sort of keeping his aggro and getting him to go around, so we could just stand still. But yeah, I don't remember much after that point, because obviously that's usually the point where I died when we were doing that. But yeah.
I will be honest, I also think not only is he the weakest fight mechanically, I think he has the weakest theme. Like, it's not like it's a horribly bad theme, it's just Equilibrium and Fiend are such more memorable ones, because obviously Equilibrium is the femme choir with the like low tones and stuff, whereas Fiend is obviously the very Devil May Cry kind of fucking music, and they're both so memorable. And then I can't even remember the fucking name of Zervans, which is bringing shame on me because I should, because I'm always getting it mixed up with something else. But it just wasn't that you know, it is the weakest fight. I don't think I've actually got you to do. We're moving on to the next thingy because I don't think we have more really to say on trials. I don't think I've made you do any of these, and I'm not sure about you, Devin. Have you done any of the side dungeons in Heavensward?
I might have. Let me see. I'm trying to pull up a list of the dungeons.
I honestly cannot remember too much about a lot of them myself.
Yeah,
I think
because they stopped doing side dungeons like this because they did a little bit in Realm Reborn, and I don't even think I've done all of those, or at least the hard versions. Let me see, which one were the side ones?
I think
They had a
somehow
few.
hard is one.
I don't think I did somehow hard. I think I actually recently did the. I had it in my like log forever, but the Great Gabal Library hard. I think that one was main story, but I recently did the hard one. And I was like tanking. I was trying to what was that? Yeah, I was leveling my paladin at the time, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, guys. Like, you know, just kind of ran through and did what I needed to do. As I'm pretty sure I think I got that on a roulette, and it's like, hey, you got the library hard because I actually got the cinematic because I have it auto skip on things I've already seen, especially in the roulettes. And I was like, I've never done this. I just literally sat through the cinematic, and I'm sitting on like a 5th or 6th level, like almost level 80 at that point. So, and I like the callback with the library on that. That was I just forgot it. Was that 2? That the library was from?
My brain's gone blank.
Now.
I want to say maybe 1 because Matoya was 1. But
Yeah,
I could be wrong. And I will be eternally shamed when I find out I'm wrong.
Well, there's the that's for Shadowbringers has a callback to one with one of theirs. So, but I don't want to go too much into that. What was Great Cabal Library? I know it had to do with hers, but I can't remember what callback they had to it because I know it was one of the it's in one of because I know they did the first 5 remake and I remember seeing it in one of those. Now I can't remember it.
Ray has given us a list in chat of Sent Mukianas. I hated the music. I remember that one. I just remember how grating the music is on the ear. It's really high pitched and horrible to listen to, in my opinion. Farah's Serious Hard is pretty cool. Unlike the first one where you're going up the lighthouse, this time you're going down. I thought that was quite cool. Lost City of Andapur Hard, I loved that. Lost City of Andapur Hard is something I recommend you do, Logic. I will obviously help you unlock it and everything, but before Shadowbringers, it's a big kind of hint towards Shadowbringers, and a lot of people didn't know that. One of the monsters is really important later. Well, 2 of the monsters are actually really important from that. Hullbreaker Isle Hard, I actually remember I really liked because I think it's the hard version of Hullbreaker Isle where you actually kind of like sparring with the Maelstrom and you kind of find out more about Captain Mistbeard, which I thought was really cool. Great Grubel Library Hard, I'm actually forgetting a lot of, honestly. And then Somal Hard is the weaker version of the final 2 dungeons, because obviously the other one is Baelsar's Wall, and you can't go wrong with Baelsar's Wall. Because who doesn't want to hear sloppy as you do in the final fight?
For
Every
Alamigo.
time. For Alamigo! I have you now. How do you like this? So yeah, so as harsh as it is to say, I'm in this weird spot wherein I kind of like the hard modes. I'm going to quotation marks because they're not really that hard. But I liked this idea. Back in the day, I really liked this idea of showing us a dungeon from like another viewpoint. And especially as coming over as a WoW player, I loved the idea that it wasn't just the same dungeon with the same bosses, with the same mechanics, just they hit you harder. Or like added 1 extra mechanic on top. Like it was a whole new story. It was a whole new visual. It was all that. And obviously they've removed that nowadays. And in a way I'm sad, but at the same time it's kind of like I'm trying to think of half these hard dungeons and I'm now like, Can't actually remember. Like I remember the normal versions of them, but the hard version is harder to remember. So I guess in a way, I'm glad that they stopped doing the hards because there's a lot more memorable side dungeons now. Like for instance, the twinning is a fantastic one. Spoilers.
Yes.
I'm not
The
going to go
music.
in. Yeah, I'm
The
not going
music
to
in the
obviously
twinning is
go
the best.
into it. Not going to go into it too much for Logic's and Slandy's sake, but
Well,
some of the
considering you're
side
going to
dungeons.
probably have him do stuff, so he already knows Alexander, but you're going to have him do stuff from Stormblood to the side stuff too, and that's going to play real well for those two. So,
Yep. So I think we'll leave aside dungeons there because I feel like none of us are really going to have a lot to say more than what I've already kind of said.
I think I did Lost City of Andapur, but it's been so long. I actually didn't know the tie-in on that for Shadowbringer, so I'm going to have to go back knowing myself and be like, okay, what did I miss?
Once again, I cannot see chat because I'm far too far away, but I'd like to thank whoever's popped in and gave us the follow and the support. Great goodbye,
Lumi Bay?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think so. As I say, my chat is the exact opposite end of my room, so I've got no chance. Now I am gonna throw a wrench in the actual plan I made here, because the next thing is how the contents are aged, and I'm actually gonna switch that, and we're gonna move on to crafters and come back to that. So I know for a fact that Devin and Slandy hasn't done any crafting and gathering. He gave me the heads up on this.
Level 40. I'm a level 40 fisher. Is my only crafting. I have one level 10 cooking. That's it.
I have a funny feeling that's probably still ahead of Slandy.
I think my highest is 20 or something.
Ocean fishing. That's the only reason I'm level 40.
But I know for a fact that Mr. Logic's here loves his crafting and gathering. Somehow that's how I sold the game to him on fishing.
Yeah, the ocean fishing is good.
But I was like, right, stop doing. He kept saying, I don't want to do the story. I want to do some crafting and gathering. And I was like, just get to the end of Heavensward, and then you can craft and gather, because there's a much better system in place for you now to do that. So they introduced. Obviously, it's actually not a Heavensward piece of content. It's actually Shadowbringers. But I'm going to talk about it here because you can start doing it in Heavensward, and I feel for newer players at least, in their mind, it's Heavensward content really, because as I say, you can start it there. So we're going to do a little short bit about the diadem and the firmament. Now, I have been in the diadem more than I've been in the firmament, ironically. I use the diadem to level my botanist and like the last 10 levels of my miner. I didn't do any fishing in the diadem, but I know you can. And then the firmament I use to power level crafters, but I've not paid too much of attention to it. Obviously, it's all going towards rebuilding Ishgard, and that will lead to the housing area that we get called Endwalker. But purely from a crafter gathering point of view, as I'm going to go to Logics mainly for this, what is your opinion as a new player coming in and having the diadem and the firmament?
I think it's a little bit too overpowered, honestly. In terms of the crafting in the firmament, it's just ridiculous leveling. You craft a couple of items, you level up like 4 times just from like a few items. It's crazy. But I think it's also good, obviously because I enjoy that kind of content. There was something I was going to say and it's just gone.
Was it about the firmament or the diadem?
I can't remember, but you said come the next expansion there will be new stuff. I'm hoping that doesn't mean that it's going to go away.
No, but you have actually said the firmament, for anyone who was wondering, looking at this later on YouTube probably, because I know probably most people watching on Twitch already know, the firmament won't be going away with the introduction of a new housing area. They have confirmed it will remain as a crafter gather area, and I think that's for the best because it really, as you say, its leveling is ridiculous. It is a great because I actually I've said I did every piece of content whilst it was current. I did most content whilst it was current. Crafting and gathering was not one of them. I actually didn't level my crafters and gatherers until Shadowbringers came out. I actually had barely leveled any job until just before Shadowbringers came out. Basically, I was a warrior from Around Reborn up until late Stormblood. And then I, just like a month or two before Shadowbringers actually officially fully came out, I power leveled every single battle class from 1 to 70 in like a 2-month span, all of them. Burnt myself out like crazy. It was a bad idea. I don't recommend it. But I didn't do crafters and gatherers. It wasn't until Shadowbringers came out that I leveled alchemy first from 1 to 80. This was before the firmament, so that I could get the coat that the alchemist had, because I thought it was really cool, and that's all I actually leveled it for. I didn't actually care about the crafting and gathering. And then I did minor just because I was like, I may as well. And then obviously, as I say, then the firmament came out, and I went on and did that, and just power leveled everything. As you say, the level in there is ridiculous. I got from like 1 to 70 at least. I got in like a few hours per job. Like it really is ridiculous. You pop on some EXP bus, and you just sit in for. I didn't do what most people who have a brain do, and went and gathered the resources themselves. I just bought them off a market board. And as I say, I leveled from like 1 to 70 on all my crafters in like a few hours. It was nuts. I will say I liked the diadem. I think it was the diadem actually, before I go into it as what it is now, was actually content back in Heavensward. It was sort of like what is now Eureka and Bozja, but it was before it was all kind of figured out. It wasn't good. A lot of people are glad that it's gone. And a lot of people actually were really worried when they announced that it's coming back. But they've re-released it. It's a gatherer zone now, and you can. It's good to just, like, if you really want to just chill, going in the diadem, maybe put on a YouTube video or some music, or even just listen to the in-game music. You can just go in there and you just basically run around in circles and gather shit and level up. It's free EXP a stay.
And occasionally fire a rocket launcher at an enemy, which is fun.
I was gonna say, I was just thinking about that.
There is a bazooka. There is like a bazooka as your limit break in as the thingy.
Yeah, the effects on it are really nice when it's sort of charging up the attack.
What is that? I'm just checking chat, making sure I haven't missed anything. Right, okay. I regret looking at the chat now that I have. But yeah, so crafting and gathering. I don't know if you have more to say on that logic, really. No, I don't think so. So
I'd need to do it. That's what I have to say.
Well, we know someone else who needs to do plenty, so you're not alone in that boat, at least here.
I've never been good at crafting. Even in WoW, I was like, I think I never leveled like my leather worker or my hunter that I had for like 10 years. It was still like in level like 20 or 30 content. I was really bad with crafting stuff in games.
And all you had to do in WoW is press a button.
Right. So just to kind of give you an idea of how bad I'm really bad at crafting.
So we're going to talk about content aging. Now, Around Reborn obviously is one of these things where it's aged, in most people's eyes, badly. Because I did Around Reborn when it was current, and I know other people who did it when it was current, and for them it wasn't as bad as it is for people now, because obviously you've got all the post-patch quests that really didn't age as well as people would like them to. It's as people say, it's a bit of a slog for Around Reborn now, whereas obviously in day it wasn't, because they came out in patches and it was current. So I want to talk more from the people who are newer, which is basically all three of you, because obviously none of you really were there at Heavensward. How do you each feel that Heavensward has aged as newer players? How do you feel? Do you feel like there's any part of it that it was like, this is taking a bit too long, this is, this isn't really mechanically, it's not aged well, anything like that? I'll start with Slandy, so he actually has something to say for once.
Cheers! Cheers!
Oh, who are we cheering?
Oh,
that is what I was saying.
Who are we cheersing?
Where?
Thanks again, Chief. That doesn't get you out of talking duty, Sandy.
Oh, damn it.
There was an attempt.
Well, considering old content and how it's aging, for newer players, I think the best experience I had is with leveling the alt characters in the dungeons. I feel like that is actually one of the best things of like old content still being usable in the game.
We're mainly talking about Heavensward here, though.
Yeah. So I've been doing a few of them on my Dark Knight here the last few times. So, and yeah, with other stuff I can't really say. So
We'll go with you, Devin, because then in order of people and when they played, you are the next one, really. So
Okay, gotcha. I think I think what really holds it up is the story. So in terms of going back and playing through with an alt, I feel like I just kind of go over it because of Palace of the Dead, and the Heaven on High. That's that comes out, that's that helps me level. Going back and still playing some of the trials, and I think that's really where it holds up is the trial fights. But like the story in itself is it's so good that it doesn't matter when you play it. Like I feel like whenever I watch people, and there's a lot of new people who have been playing it, I've been seeing some other high quality high viewer streamers start playing it, and just seeing their reactions, and it's just like it kind of holds up today with how I was feeling when that was being played, and then just talking to those older players. So in terms of how it's aged, I don't think it suffered nearly as much as Realm Reborn did, because the Realm Reborn was fixing a lot of fixing of what happened in 1.0 and that kind of sense, and then Heavensward was kind of their like way of getting into like, okay, the narrative, how we're going to tell story, what's worked from a Realm Reborn, and I think Heavensward is still technically the shortest expansion, compared in terms of like quest count and content, but the story was just still so impactful. So I think that's what's going to help hold it up for any new players, even with what we get in Stormblood and Shadowbringers, with what those bring. I think this still kind of is at the top of the list of content. We'll see what Endwalker does, and I think it's still going to be kind of like you have those three kind of vying for that top position. So
yeah. So Logic, you are the most recent finisher of Heavensward. How do you feel that because obviously you had to deal with Realm Reborn. I know that you took a lot of time with Realm Reborn because you obviously the way you play games is a lot more here and there, with at least in regards to this game. So how did you feel that Heavensward shaped up for you doing it as a more modern player?
Well, I think the story gripped me a little bit more. And I was going to say something else, and it's just gone again. It keeps happening. But no, I think it's pretty good. I kind of feel that the we obviously, as you said, we kind of feel like some of the things that happened in A Realm Reborn kind of were a little pointless in a way because of obviously the way that things pan out. In a sense, but at the same time, like you can understand where it was going, and that sort of arc was okay, but I don't think it was like great because of that. Because
You're on about the Sultana arc, aren't you?
Yeah, the way that it sort
Yeah.
of it's just like it didn't, not really much came out of it in the end. Like the net result is the same.
Yeah, it was a shame. Like I actually have to admit, like that was the first time they faked out a death, and I was like,
Yeah,
like because this is before we even knew about the Scions, and it was like,
Right.
really, she's not dead. We went through this emotional toil at the end of A Realm Reborn for fuck all, really.
Yeah, at Realm Reborn, I was feeling like they Game of Thrones us, and then it turns out they did not. So
I still don't get why they did that, but I can't get into other things that there's things that are good that happen from that, but I don't want to go too much into that because that's later. But at first it was weird.
I feel And I'm sorry to cut you off here, Logic, we will get back to you, but I definitely feel that since Heavensward as well, and this is something you'll find Logic, but I'm afraid to kind of spoil you, but I'm not spoiling you directly, but since Heavensward, it feels like we've been scared to actually kill someone off. Because we had Horshafont die, we had Yeasley die, we had, obviously, Moanbreeder just before, we had Papalimo at the end of Heavensward, and then just since then, it's like everything's either been a fake out or just no one's even at risk, and it's like, can we kill someone? Can just someone die? Like, I actually really hope in Endwalker they don't do like, oh yeah, we're gonna kill one character and that. I hope we just go nuts in Endwalker and just fucking kill everyone off. I don't care. Kill people. Stop being scared. It's such and your Stola especially, kill her. Stop faking her death out.
Everyone's
God
gonna die.
almighty.
Everyone's gonna die, not her.
Too popular. She's not going to die. She's way too popular.
I hate it so much. That's why she should die.
At this point, it's like they can't kill her. I can't go too much into it. They can't kill her because of how much they faked us out with that. So, because no one will believe it.
Yeah, this is what I've always said. If Logic, don't worry. Logic knows that she gets faked out a lot because even before he played the game, I was always making the jokes that even if she killed her, we'd never fucking. But we'd be
no one would believe it.
We'd be like 2032 doing another round revisited, and we'd be like, "Yeah, she's coming back this patch. Don't you worry." Like, we'd never fucking buy it. But yeah, Logic, continue what you were saying. You're saying how obviously Sultana arc didn't really feel anything.
Yeah.
But how about the rest of it?
The music, obviously, as you know, as soon as you went into Ishgard, into the Foundation, I think I said something like, "Can we just have this music for the rest of the game or something?" Because that was obviously really good. I think, did I pick up Dragoon before we started the DLC?
Yes, you did, because I told you that you'll get some extra dialogue.
That definitely pays off, because obviously, you know, you're there alongside Estinian, and, you know, obviously the class quest continues in those areas as well. So that was all really good. And like I say, the story, I think, was a little more interesting for me because during A Realm Reborn, it was kind of slow and boring, and, you know, up until the point at the end where it suddenly picks up. Whereas with this one, it was a little bit more interesting throughout, I think, for me.
Zone-wise, it's very nice as well. Like, I am not really a big snow fan in games, but Coarthus was really nice.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't really particularly like snowy places mostly.
The fact that you run your chocobo or mounts through there, especially chocobos, you leave the tracks in the snow and it follows behind you, was not something you see in a lot of games, especially MMOs.
Oh yeah, Logix won't know this because he's a new player, but another fun fact is that flying was only introduced in Heavensward. We didn't originally have it in A Realm Reborn like you did when you went through the story. So, how do you feel that the way to get flight in Heavensward has aged up? Because obviously you wasn't given it like you are now in A Realm Reborn, you actually had to earn it. I know that Ray at Alpha's probably like pulling his hair out at the mention of the fact that you have to earn them.
Well, it sounds a bit strange, really, because obviously before Heavensward, you kind of just got given it. If they added that in afterwards, surely it should be the same system there as well.
I feel like there's probably too many areas in A Realm Reborn. They're scared to like implement that kind of system in that many areas.
They would have to do so much in A Realm Reborn to do the same system. And with the flying, I can easily compare it to with how WoW unlocks flying. I hate the way that WoW unlocks flying now. I'd rather do the first time I unlocked flying in like Burning Crusade was you paid for it. It was a grind. It was a lot of gold at the time, but I did it and it was satisfying. Now you have to like do all these achievements. You have to do all these reputations. In Final Fantasy, from Heavensward forward, you get the Aether Currents, and it accomplishes probably what every game developer wants you to do is explore the area. And I think, of course, in The Realm Reborn, it was only recently added 5 was it 3? They added it.
I think so. Yeah, I
Whenever
think
they did the revamp was when they added it. So it would be, and like you said, it'd be way too crazy to do aether currents in every single zone and put them in these areas. And the fact that flying, like A Realm Reborn, was not designed with flying in mind, whereas Heavensward and everything beyond is designed with that in mind. And then I kind of enjoyed the aether current hunt until you have to redo it. But my first time through, it's like it really goes along with the story too. They really set it up that you can pretty much do it as you play the story. It doesn't deter you too much to go and do it. And then I think Azizla is the only other zone that you don't have to get aether currents. You just do the quest to get flying, and that's it. So I
Well, I
personally
actually,
enjoy it.
I've taught Logics, and I think I actually told Slandy when he was going through that they should always get the aether currents in each zone before the main quest makes them move on. Because if they don't, because I didn't back in the days of actual Heavensward, I didn't. I ignored it. I was like, I don't care. I cared when the patches came out. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. Now I have to walk to each, and I will be honest, I didn't get flying in Heavensward until actually after Stormblood had came out, and I was done with Stormblood. And as I was going through Stormblood, I started doing the aether currents as I was going through each area. I was like, I wish I'd done this back in Heavensward. Doing Heavensward post patches without flying was just the worst days of my life. I don't know what I was thinking or why I didn't go get aether currents. It really
I think
didn't
that was
take
the
long.
first thing I did, because I was like, I want flying, and then it, like when they were like, hey, you gotta do it through these zones, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go get it while I can now. That's why.
Yeah.
It's like I don't want to come back here and do it again, So I know I did it that way. The only thing, and this is kind of towards Stormblood, is there's that one area you go to and you try to do it, and it's like, oh, you can't go to this other area, and then people were like, yeah, you'll go there much later, and I was like, that's gonna drive me nuts. So but other than that one thing, I think in almost every zone you can do it.
Yeah, I do know which zone you mean as well. Now, I have left off some stuff on here because I've only thought about it since the podcast is started. But you actually reminded me, Devin, thankfully. Palace of the Dead was actually introduced in Heavensward, and I've not got it on the list as part of Heavensward content. And I think it's because it's such fucking garbage content. I almost forgot about it. So quickly, I want to get people's opinions on Palace of the Dead. So I'll start with you, Devin, if you've able to
Sorry.
speak.
My daughter's joining us today, so
Okay.
I mean, I didn't do Palace of the Dead until I started leveling alts. Hey, stay right here. Okay. So I like the idea of how it takes you back to like the original Final Fantasy like dungeon design. Like you get the little map, you get little items. There is a type of story that happens with it. Sorry, she's gonna be so distracting. Hey girl, I am almost done. I promise. Okay, can you go up there? Sorry. But I think I recently did the what's the one before? It's 100. Is it 100 floors or 150 floors before you have to get like an actual group to do more?
100 floors before you have to get a proper group.
That's it. Okay, so I did the 100. I did kind of enjoy that, but I used it to level. I think it's good for leveling. And then I kind of like this kind of like randomly generated dungeon idea. But I know some people, when you get to Heaven on High, I hear that one's much better, but that's another topic. So for later. But Palace of Dead, I think, was very interesting. Is that the one that also you have to do for Necromancer that everyone's been talking about?
Yeah. You have to do floor 200 solo.
Yeah, so I'm interested in seeing that if I ever get around to doing it.
Now, I know we never fully did it with you, Logic. I think we only did it to floor 50. But what was your opinions of Palace of the Dead?
Well, I kind of like randomly generated stuff because obviously you can go into it and it's not going to be the same thing over and over again. But as we found out, it seems to be a case of if you want loot, there are a lot of people in there who just want to run off to the next room, and you've got to go and search off on your own, which is kind of annoying. So there's that to it. kind of like that you can get the different ability things. I can't remember what those are called.
Commanders.
Yeah, those. Those are pretty cool. But yeah, obviously I need to do more of that. We've not really done very much.
Yeah, there's good reason for that.
I imagine there is.
Slandy, have you even unlocked it?
Not on the current character, but I did unlock it on my NA character, which I used to play on a long time ago. I think I'd done the first 40 floors with a group in the past. So, while leveling, I can't remember which class, but I was leveling an old class job. So,
Right, well, I did Palace of the Dead back when it first came out, and when it first came out, I thought it was great. Like, for the first week, I thought, oh yeah, this is actually really cool. After a week, I was like, why am I still fucking doing this? And I have been that way ever since. Like, it's in my opinion, content that it runs its course really fast, and especially when you've power leveled through it. I don't think I've got anything else in particular that I wanted to speak about. So we've got extra questions, but I feel like we should wrap up soon so Devin can go be a dad.
Sorry, y'all.
Oh, it's fine. We just don't want to keep you from your family. So, Slandy, have you got any questions or things you want to talk about Heavensward?
Nope.
Logics? Anything from you?
Yeah, can we just have the Ishgard theme like everywhere all the time, please? I want a mount with it on. No.
Well, if we ever get big enough as a channel and get to have an interview with Yoshi, you can raise that up with him.
I will.
Devin, any questions or things you want to raise?
I think we pretty much exhausted a lot of it, so...
All right, well, as Devin said at the beginning, you can find him over at his channel, TheDevinAspect. Do you have a YouTube?
I do, but the last video on there is when I beat Shadowbringer, so that was a year ago.
Well, he
but
has
I
a
will be putting
YouTube.
content on there soon.
If you're watching later on YouTube, we will have links in the description. We'll have Devin send them to Slandy so that he can put them all in. Plans for our channel, just quick load. We've got another podcast in 2 weeks. We're not going to delay this podcast. I actually have a plan for the next podcast. It will be a pre-Endwalker kind of like speculations, excitements, thoughts, what we going into it. It's the weekend just before Endwalker comes out. The plan is hopefully to have Devin back for that, but he can't be. Yeah, it's fingers crossed. There's no confirmation of that yet. Raya Alpha will be back for us, and Logix won't be partaking in that one because of him being nowhere near Endwalkers. There's no point in getting him to speak about it. He doesn't really know anything much about. Sandy will be there because he pretty much has to be there because we stream via him for the podcasts. So his quietness is earned by streaming.
Yay!
Obviously, I've been streaming a little bit of No Man's Sky recently. I recently bought, I sort of bought Far Cry 6, so I might be streaming that. Maybe I kind of want to stream the whole thing properly as a story. So if I don't buy maybe a couple of days, it's because I want to wait until after I've got my Endwalker burst gone. I'm just kind of streaming casually at the moment. Logix has been streaming recently. He probably will be doing some more Sky Factory. But I will be stealing the channel as of the 3rd of December, and I will be streaming Endwalker for about the first month because I'll be streaming the main story, all the side quests, getting the fly-in, doing the extreme trials, gearing up, doing the side dungeons. Basically anything I can do in Endwalker, I will be streaming. And I intend to be doing it again for every patch subsequently that comes out for Endwalker. So you can expect a ton of content as of December. I will be streaming straight. All of that will go to the YouTube. As of the next podcast, we will be taking a little break in doing the podcast because obviously usually we try to do them every 2 weeks. But due to me stealing the channel for Endwalker, our next podcast will be planned for either week 1 or week 2 of January. I already have another guest for that who hasn't been on before, and the topic will be a little different. So that'll be a bit of fun. I'll be talking about that with Slandy and Logix as of after the next podcast, so that I can keep all my thoughts in one place. And I have a few podcasts planned for after that, and there's a few games next year that's coming out that I want to stream myself. So that's generally a plan going forward with the channel, because we've not actually spoke about that in a while, because we haven't done too much major as of recently, because of me not knowing what I wanted for this podcast until Logix finished Heavensward, and it gave us the ability to do another Run Revisited. Some point down the line, I don't know when, I will torture Logix, Slandy, and Rare Alpha with a quiz of Heavensward, because I know they hate them, so I will be doing it to hurt them further. But they will have warning about that before I do it. But yeah, that's generally our stuff. Obviously, if you're on the Twitch, you know where our Twitch is. If you're over on YouTube watching this later down the line, you can find us at www.twitch.tv/prettycasualgaming. If you're over on the Twitch side, we do have a YouTube where you can go subscribe to that, and then you can keep an eye on videos that I do as a series. And Logix is now uploading series to there as well. So if you miss stuff, we will be putting it there. But obviously, as I've said in previous videos, most of our content is on Twitch due to obviously A, the agreement as affiliate, and B, because I just prefer streaming to Twitch because I prefer the interaction. We do have a Discord if you are in Twitch or YouTube. We will put the Discord link in the Twitch chat. Well, Slandy will, if he's noticed. And we will be putting it below in the YouTube description. Other than that, I don't think there's out more really to say about the channel. You can find Slandy at his own channel, www.twitch.tv/Slanderman, I think.
Yes.
And as I said, please go give some love to Devin if you haven't already. When he streams, he streams. But that
will be
it.
coming back more often soon, hopefully. So, especially with Endwalker.
And obviously, me and Logix both use this channel, so you can find us here. Other than that, thank you everyone who has been watching on either YouTube or Twitch, and we will catch you all later. Bye, guys.
Bye.